Well, hello, NARPM family. I am very excited to be on the other side of the table today. I will be interviewing Pete Neubig, founder of VPM Solutions. I'm excited to have him as a guest, if you will, today. So let's jump right into it. And Pete, tell us a little bit about the story behind VPM. How did this get started? Why did you feel a need for starting VPM?
Yeah, so Peter, you have big shoes to fill from the other podcast host. So hopefully you do a good job. So how did VPM come to be? Interesting enough, like when I ran Empire, I was an early adopter on virtual team members. I think there was a few of us that were early adopters. But most of the people that were early adopters were just giving kind of like checklists to the virtual team members, like, hey, these are the checklists, and this is exactly what you have to do, and you're not going to do any more, any less. And that was really it. So they're doing really, really low level tasks. What I ended up is I ended up using the team members to actually own a full process. So, for example, I had a team member that owned the collection and eviction process, one that owned lease renewal process. And what happened was we started using them to actually do all the property management. And when it was all said and done, I had run the business with 23 virtual team members and 10 people in the US. And I actually had some virtual team members supervising team members in the US. And so when I had sold Empire and I was looking for the next thing to do, I had owned a corporation in Mexico, and we were going to go the traditional route, which we'll talk about later, where we hire them in our Mexican corporation and we kind of rent them out to you. And I ended up connecting with who is now my co-founder, Ross Gilbert. And Ross came up with a whole different idea. He's like, I like this idea. However, I think we should do it through technology. And I think he was very surprised when, after he gave me the pitch, I said, okay, let's do it. And he was like, wait, what? And I'm like, what do you think the check is I have to write? Let's go ahead and let's build the technology and let's do this. And easier said than done, brother. I thought
Yeah.
I would write a check and tech people will just build something and it'll work right away. I could tell you that I wrote the check in February. By September, the money was gone and we didn't have a product.
Oh
And
boy.
we had to basically restart and write another check. And I realized I was not an investor. I was the CEO at that time. I just thought
Mm.
I was an investor at that time.
Wow.
But
Wow.
so I started it because a lot of property managers were getting squeezed by the their profit was getting squeezed, and I
Mhm.
knew that this literally was the thing that saved my business. I
Got
went
it.
from being not profitable to being profitable with getting these great team members. So I'm like, I can help lots of people get jobs, and I can help lots of companies reduce their overhead and become profitable. Maybe sometime
Yeah.
in their career.
So this was literally something that you implemented in your own business and then realized, you know what, this could scale and I could help others do the same and become profitable. So you touched on a checklist. This is how you started, or a lot of PMs start when they use virtual assistants, a checklist, right? A task list of here's what I want you to do, what you want the remote team member to do throughout the day. But this has evolved. So tell us how can the property management industry use virtual assistants, remote team members, international team members, whatever you want to call them?
Yeah, well, I think that you can use them in almost any capacity now, as long as they don't have to be physically at the property or need a license to do something. So, some examples of how we used our virtual team members when we were at Empire, excuse me, were I'll give you an example. We had around 900 properties when I sold, and I had one person, Jessica, ran all the lease renewals. Now, the first thing people would say is they're listening to this is, well, lease renewals. Well, that means that if they negotiate, they have to be licensed in certain states, right? Texas would be one of those states. But what we did is we used policy around that. And our policy was we increased the lease by X% every year. And
Mm,
so now there was no negotiating. Now, if a resident or an owner client wanted to negotiate, like, I don't want you to raise the rent, or I don't want you to raise the rent only X%, then and only then did that get scaled up and escalated to the property manager.
makes
So this
sense.
is the kind of 80/20 or 90/10 rule. So the property managers what happened was we stopped doing all we call it like the busy work or the typing work, and we allowed them to start doing the head work right from the neck up. So
Mhm.
they would get the escalations. They were starting to build, a proactive business. So we were never proactive. And if you're listening to this and you're running a reactive business, there's when you run a reactive business, your churn rate goes up, and you potentially not making as much money as you could make, because chaos, you never make money in chaos. So lease renewal was one of them. Rent collections and evictions was one. Maintenance coordination. A lot of people didn't realize, like, wait, you let your maintenance, coordinators talk to owners all the time, right? So there was this stigmatism where remote team members can't speak to owners, only residents. We blasted right through that one, and like my team members are talking directly to owners. Onboarding, inside sales reps. So even my sales reps eventually became our BDMs became remote at one point. But the marketing people, the SEO people, the property accountants, the utility connection, like all the utilities, checking all that out, all was done with virtual team. And again, this freed up my property managers told me that they spend 80% of their time in maintenance.
Hmm.
And in about 90 days after I hired people, and by the way, I can hire more people for the same amount. So I could right now we could probably hire 2.5 to 3 people for every one person in the United States. And if you think about property management, Peter, it's like the tasks are like water.
Mhm.
It never stops. It just keeps coming over and over and over again. And if you don't have enough people to perform those tasks, now what happens is you get backlogged. And now
Mhm.
that owner client is calling you. And even if you have answers, what happens when you have so many tasks, a lot of stuff goes away. Like all of a sudden you don't do those extra tasks. All of a sudden you don't do you don't make those calls. The communication goes down. All of a sudden you're not getting the online reviews or the customer satisfaction
Mhm.
reviews, and all of that matters, right? And so as as you go more reactive, what happens is your owner client calls you, and once they call you, they feel they're managing a property through you.
Right.
You have
Right.
to manage the manager.
Yeah.
And if I
I
can be more proactive and reach out to the owner client before they reach out to me, now I'm managing the property effectively. And then
absolutely.
you get more referrals, you get more properties, and your churn rate goes down.
Absolutely. So we're talking about how the industry can use virtual assistants, and this has evolved. And you're out there at conferences, you're doing workshops, you're doing webinars where you're educating the industry on how to use virtual assistants. Do you see the industry adopting this now and using virtual assistants at different levels? What are we seeing at what are you seeing at VPM as far as how VAs are being used?
Yeah, well, we're seeing a lot of adoption in the property management space. We're starting to see adoption in like the HOA space, and the multifamily space is the last one. They're kind of laggards on this, but the single family property management companies have really adopted it. And that's because there were early adopters who got it to work, saw their profit margin go up, saw the quality of people, and they started telling everybody. The one thing I love about NARPM, one of the one things I love about NARPM is that when people find something they really like, they let everybody know.
Yeah.
So we're a young company. We're only what 2.5 years old. We have over 845, 50 jobs on the platform already using it. We have over 200 clients already, and we're one of like 14 remote team companies out there.
Yeah.
It is being adopted dramatically, and people are using them like I used to use them, and now they're actually using them at even a higher rate. So I've heard that there's CFOs that are
Yep.
running, property management companies that are living, abroad, that are virtual. I'm hearing that, there are HR directors that are living abroad. So the talent that's out there is just because they don't live in the US doesn't mean they don't have the talent.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talent. I could just tell you, we just placed somebody who's got a master's degree
Yeah.
for this coordinator job,
That's
right?
awesome.
So I mean, so the talent's out there. There's tons of great people out there.
What are the top three positions that you're seeing being filled the most in the VPN platform?
On our platform, I would say maintenance coordinator is probably number one. Then like admin, like executive admin, lease admin, just property management admin, something like that, just like an admin or executive admin. And then leasing seems to be number three, right? Like a leasing specialist. And then of course you have your property accountants and your SEO marketing people. I'm
Marketing, yeah.
starting to now see some sales. So I'm starting to see some BDMs. I'm starting to see some assistance for sales where people actually will answer sales calls. So we're starting to see some of that, but I'd say those are the main ones.
Yeah. Did you personally see a challenge, or do you think the industry faces a challenge in using VAs because they're a little concerned of letting go or not having what they think is complete control?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of that before the pandemic, right? I really truly believe the pandemic really unlocked it unlocked a lot of things, right? If you think about it, I know a lot of people that tell me they would never do self showings, and then the pandemic hit, and
Yeah.
now self showings. Right? There were owner clients of mine at the time when I was the regional vice president there that would never allow us to do self showings, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we're going to allow you to do self showings. So I think there's a percentage of companies that said I would never do remote, and now they're like, oh, I'm going to go ahead and do remote. And I think the pandemic nudged that. I think the other nudge that's happening right now is, let's be honest, inflation over
Mhm.
the last couple of years has really impacted our country, and it's impacted the world, by the way, because I'm seeing dollar figures go up all over the world. So not just in the United States, but people that I used to pay in Mexico at $8, that now it's $10. People I used to pay in the Philippines for 5, now it's 7. So you're seeing it go up. The percentages might be a little bit smaller, but you're seeing it all increase. So if I'm in the, so to go back to the original question, I'm seeing inflation kind of nudge people to look at other avenues because they just can't afford, like our pricing hasn't, the rents haven't increased that much. So the salary requirements have increased dramatically, and the lease where we make our percentages have not increased dramatically. So we can't
Right.
cover those costs. So you're almost forced to go out. The last piece I'll say is no one wants to drive to an office anymore.
Right.
And so, like when I was at Empire, if somebody lived 30 minutes away from the office, that was it. After 30 minutes, they wouldn't want to come work for us. And so once you're kind of stuck. Like if I'm going to have people come to the office, I'm stuck in that 20 to 30-minute range. It's only so much talent that
You're
you can
you're limiting yourself. Yeah.
100%. And then the last piece is I truly believe the low end office worker, I hate to say that, but the back end office worker, that those jobs used to be 30 to $40,000 a year. I believe that there are people like college graduates don't want those jobs.
Mm-mm.
Like that used to be when I graduated college, I made $25,000 a year. Like that was an entry level, and you kind of worked your way up. Well, you can't make a living in the United States with $35,000 a year. That's called, like, you're slinging burgers at Burger King for that now. And so, years ago, the construction industry went the route of, we have these illegals, or we have people that just came in over the border, whether legally or illegal. They took those jobs because no one else wanted those jobs.
Mhm.
I think we're seeing something very similar. I think we're seeing maintenance coordinators, like people that are college educated in the US don't want them, and people that are not college educated that really used to fill those jobs, they need more money, they want more
Yeah.
money, or they're just not really good candidates. Like they're not good team members,
Yeah.
if you will, to be politically correct.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So let's touch on the benefits, which you already did a little bit. Touch on the benefits of using a remote team or a virtual assistant. Specifically, you mentioned high level, low level tasks.
Yeah. So, well, I think the main benefit is economics, right? So I can hire somebody in Houston for, I don't know, whatever 55, $60,000 a year is. I don't know what that is on an hourly rate, but I can hire the same person who, when I mean same person, meaning like the avatar is the same, right? They have the same college, they have same experience, they have the same, training. and I can get that person in Mexico for 25,000 a year. I get that same person in Philippines for, 20 20,000 a year, 18,000 a year, whatever it is. So it's like, so again, just as good quality, if not better in a lot of cases. And of course, everybody's bilingual, right? So
Hmm.
that's add-on benefit versus somebody that's, that's just in the US.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first benefit is economics. The second benefit we kind of talked about as well is I'm expanding my market, for talent across the globe. So
Hmm.
now if I need a CPA, wow, look at that. There's two guys in Philippines or one in Costa Rica and three in South Africa. They're all CPAs, all have all these years, and their cost, their hourly rate is way cheaper than I could get a CPA here
Yeah.
in the US. So your back end office workers, you actually get people that are a little bit overqualified almost. Um, but think about what that does to your business. You get
Hmm.
these incredible people that are not just, they don't just have a job with you, they have a whole different mindset. So somebody in the US might have that mindset, right? You get somebody with a GED and they're getting their $40,000 a year. I mean, you have so many issues with that, right? Their car doesn't work, it breaks down, or they have the baby mama drama going on and they can't they sick all the time, or they just don't care. It's just a job. With these folks, you're getting that college degree type of mindset with a low cost, but they're getting paid more than they ever have.
Yeah.
For them, it's a great windfall. One of the things that a lot of US based company owners, they feel bad only paying $7 an hour. But I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, that's $7 an hour. It's like three times,
Hmm.
2.5 times what they typically get. And what I love is when I see some of our remote team members literally changing their lives. Like we know one that was able to buy a house for the first time because of the rates that they're getting. The $12, like they were making real big money for Philippines at $12 an hour because they had a lot of experience and whatnot. They spent a few years at this company, and the company gave them a bunch of raises, and they were able to buy a house. Like they're like making a lot of money. So you're changing lives. So the mindset for that person is not a job; it is a.
Hmm.
And one of the challenges that we have as small business owners have is we don't think of people as career steps because we're not thinking growth potentially.
It's true. Yeah.
So you could lose good people if you don't have a career ladder. So
Yeah.
everybody out there, start thinking about a career ladder for your team, whether they're US based or remote.
And that takes us into our next question, a career ladder. So training, how do folks go about training their remote team? How did you do it?
Yeah. So I don't know if the way I did it is the right way. It's the way I still teach today. But so I trained over Zoom, and I did not record the Zoom, and I highly recommend that you do record the Zoom. I also trained for 3 hours a day, and now that I realize it should only be about an hour and a half to 2 hours a day because people's brains just go to
Mhm.
mud after a couple of hours. And so what I did is there's a great book called the 1 Minute Manager that I highly recommend, and I say this in all when I speak, and I talk a lot about it. The main premise of the book is spend a lot of time with your new hires on the front end. This way, on the back end, you don't have to spend a lot of time with them. And I took that same concept with training. So that was kind of a management book, but I same concept with training. So the way I train my people is it's the same time every day, and we do training every day. So literally, it's the first of the in the morning, and we do an hour to an hour and a half. And I train not just on the task that they need to do, but I train on the process. Because if I just train on the task, they only know the task and they don't know the bigger piece to the puzzle. And so they don't know how their task affects other people. So by going over each process, it does a couple of things. One, it gives them obviously the complete picture. But two, when I was doing this, I realized that there was a lot of pieces to my process that were not documented. There was some policy that wasn't created. There was some reports that needed to be done. So I realized that there was a lot of stuff that needed to be done. And so I took that on my on those are my tasks, and I would create those. And then as I train them, they would then, and now they watch the video. And here's the other thing. A lot of people think, Peter, that they have to have the manual before they hire somebody, but they can never get to the manual because they're too busy.
Right.
And what I say is like, just don't worry about the manual, train them, and then let them write the manual. So they watch, so their job the first couple of weeks is watching the video and writing the manual. And then I just learned this kind of recently in the last year or so. I have them regurgitate back everything they learned, right? So now they have to become the professor. There's some studies that show that you have to listen, you have to hear something, or you have to hear something 6 times before you understand it, before you get it. So just in that one video, so right, they're listening to me before the video, they're watching me on the video, and they're writing it down in the manual, and then they're regurgitating it back to me. So they're using every piece, listening, learning, regurgitating, writing, all of that, all the ways we learn to get trained. And then what I do is after they kind of explain to me what they do, I go back from the beginning. I go over what we did the day before, and then I move forward. And this takes training a little bit longer, but the retention rate is a lot higher. So, in my opinion, every back office job in property management can be taught between 2 and 3 weeks, except for maintenance coordinator. I think maintenance coordinator takes a little bit longer. And my rule of thumb is if there are more decision points in the job, then it takes longer. Like lease renewal, there was only a few decision points, so it wasn't that bad.
Mm.
Maintenance coordinator is a lot of decision points. Is it over the threshold? Is it cosmetic? Is it an emergency? Does this owner have their own vendor? Is this, is do they have a home warranty company? So there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and so each one of those has to be trained on. And then after you train them, by the way, training is terrible, right? It takes a long time. I was putting in 10-hour days at Empire, and then I was adding 2 more hours of my day for training. That didn't mean I worked 10-hour days. It meant I worked 12-hour days
Mm.
for the duration of the training. But once the training was done, I got back 4, 5, 6 hours a day in perpetuity,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And so once they're trained up, they have the manual. The next batch that comes in, they train them, or they have the manual. And honestly, if you start using some of the new technology out there, like Notion, I think is a big one. Then you can literally put in all your documents and videos, and you can create, training courses, and you could build all that, so your training even gets better. But I know that's not an easy way to train, but that's the way that we did it. And if I'm sure there are people who have better ways of doing it, but that's how we did it, and it works for us. It worked for
Yeah.
us at Empire. It works for us at VPM.
I love what you said about training the person on the process, not the task. And I'm sure you or anyone that does it that way can see how that changes that person's mentality. Now they see the entire picture, what they're involved in, and it's not just a task. It's not tedious. It's not something that they're just doing repeatedly
What we did at
over. And
Empire, what we did at Empire is, if anybody was part of that process, uh, including my accounting people, because your accounting people are kind of part of every process,
Mhm.
we would bring them in and train them on the process. Because your accounting people, they're the caboose, and a lot of times all the mistakes that the process makes lands on their lap. And so we wanted them to have their input. And here's the other thing. When I was building my processes, my team, once they were trained, I gave them carte blanche on modifying the process,
Yeah.
but they cannot modify the policy. The policy, the company policy, I'm the company owner, I own the company policy. But the process is now no longer owned by me. You own the process. It's your process, and you're in that seat. And if you find better ways to do it,
Yeah.
I'm all for it. Even if it doesn't work because you don't know the full picture. By the way, I always said, hey, just follow the process for at least for the first, 30 or 60 days before you make any kind of modifications. But I'll give you a one really great story on this is Jessica ran lease renewals, and we used to do lease renewals, I think 60 days out. And it was really, it was really time crunch. And she just moved it to 90 days out, and it made things so much better. And when I asked, I said, well, just curious, what made you decide to do 90 days out? And she goes, oh, and she gives me all these really valid points. And I'm like, can't argue with that. Love it. I'm glad you
Mm.
did it. Let's do it. That. Let's keep it. And so when somebody that you hire, whether they're US or remote, when they own that process, you got them. You
Yeah,
got them. They're a lifer. They take ownership, accountability, and responsibility. And man, if everybody in your organization took ownership, accountability, and responsibility instead of blame, excuse, denial, where would your organization be?
yeah,
It might be 10, 15, 20% better than it is now, if not more.
absolutely. Let me ask you this: as far as we're still speaking on training, I think something that anyone that you ask in the industry would agree with is that every property management company does things very differently. Everyone's got the different processes, different ways of doing things. How is VPM specifically helping when it comes to the training part of a remote team member?
Yeah. So look, most people don't have a lot. Most people in second and third world countries that are not in the United States do not have a lot of experience in property management, right? They just don't. So what we did is we created a free training courses,
Mm.
right? Property Management 101. I think we've got like 12 courses on Property Management 101. We now started teaming up with partners in the industry like Rentvine and Property Meld and Pet Screening for courses on that. So what we do to help the both the industry and the remote team member close that gap on lack of training is provide some training. So it's not the end all be all, and I get that. But if somebody takes these training courses, now they know the basics, right? So at least I'm not getting them and they don't even know what our acronyms are. Now they know the acronyms. Now they know the basics of Rentvine or Property Meld or whatever it is. And so for the remote team member, it helps them get a job quicker. And for the company, it helps get somebody who, one, they showed that they have the capacity to learn because every one of these courses has an exam at the end. They have to pass that exam. Two, it shows that somebody's willing to take time out of their own day. It shows three that they're interested in that subject matter and they're interested and it shows how hungry they are on getting that job. So those to me are all ingredients in a person I'm looking for. Those all like have those are core values that are wrapped up in there that I'm looking for. So that person that does those trainings that takes 12 courses or takes all the recommended courses that you post a job on and they could test out, those people I know I can train. Those people I know are going to be great team members for our organization. So that's how we kind of bridge that gap.
I love that approach.
Yeah, Pete, we got time for one more question, buddy.
Uh, I was going to touch on letting the experts do the training versus, I mean, you couldn't be the expert in that folio rent manager, property mail, everything. So letting the experts, the technology, the courses that they've built do that for us.
Okay.
And then we'll skip culture and we'll dive into you want to dive into how do we pay them for the different models?
I think you just let's dive right into the different models.
Okay. Okay. So I love the approach that VPM is taking when it comes to the training. So it would be really hard for you, Pete Neubig, to sit down with the VA and train them on Folio, Rent Manager, Rentvine, and all these things, right? But you guys are providing the courses. VPM is providing the courses directly from the experts, from these partners in the industry. Great. Love that approach.
100%. Yeah, we're not the experts. So Rentvine created the Rentvine course, Property Mill created the Property Mill course, etc.
Excellent. There's a lot of different models out there when it comes to hiring or bringing on a remote team. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so VPM is called a direct hire model. All right, so there's direct hire, and then there's I don't even know what you call it, but like you basically hire a virtual assistant that works for a company, and they basically rent that virtual assistant out to you. So those are the two main models. We run a direct hire model. So what happens now is you get on VPM's site, you can search over 30, I think right now at the time of this recording is about 35,000 virtual assistants that are on the platform looking to work. You can cert, however, by the certification we talked about, by other aspects. And then you can connect with them. And if you and so we let the market the market kind of dictate the hourly rate. So
Mm.
everybody has a different hourly rate. We don't set the market. We don't set the hourly rate. And when you post a job, you're putting in a range of hourly rate. So then once you decide, okay, this is the person I like, you can hire them directly. You pay them through our platform directly. And the way VPN makes money is the remote team member pays us 10%. So for example, let's say Peter, you were a virtual assistant. I liked you. You wanted 12 bucks. We negotiate 10. You would pay VPM $1. You would get $9 an hour.
Mm.
That's how it works. Now they don't work for VPM. They work directly for your company in this case. And they just get paid through the platform. They enter time through the platform. You can manage them through the platform. The training is on the platform. So the platform becomes kind of like I call VPM like an ADP for remote
Yeah.
team members.
Yeah. Love the transparency with that process. Hey, well, Pete, this has been super informative. Love everything that VPM is doing, and love that you are leading the VPM team and experience. So,
Awesome. Well,
uh,
we're gonna cut, Peter. We're gonna cut to a commercial break. So go ahead and take us to a commercial break, and then we'll be right back. And then you can ask me the lightning round. You gotta
so
say,
let's do this. Let's do this. Let's cut to a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll go right into the lightning round that Pete Neubig loves to do for the
gotta do the sound
podcast.
effect, Peter. You gotta do it. There you go.
Lightning round.
Right back.
All right, so we are back and just wrapped up our interview with Pete Neubig, CEO and founder of VPM Solutions. We're gonna dive right into the lightning round. This is we don't have we're gonna do a couple of them. I'm gonna throw you off with some of these, but I know you're gonna do real good. So let me ask you this: what would be one piece of advice that you would give someone who is just starting a PM business?
PM business. That's an easy one, right? Join NARPM. We're on a NARPM podcast. Find a mentor, and join NARPM. That's the number one reason why my business blew up. Was NARPM.
Awesome. What was your first job?
I was a daily news boy. So New York Daily News boy. I think to this day, bro, hardest job I ever had. 7 days a week. I had to get up at like 5 in the morning, and I had a route, and I was your literally typical newsboy where I had the satchel with the papers, and I had a dog at the time, and he would run with me, and I would go ride my bike, and I'd put the papers in there, and it had to be done in the mornings, not before school, not after school. So that was a rough job, man.
So it sounds like that would almost be something that most people don't know about you. But is there something else that most people don't know about you?
Um, let's see. I mean, if you haven't seen me at a conference, then you haven't seen my little Iron Man bag. So that's something I'm
Yeah.
pretty. So I would say that a lot of people don't realize that I am a three-time Iron Man finisher, and I am also a Iron Man retiree. I'm retired from Iron Man. Like, I'll leave that to the young bucks like the Green Machine, Trent Ratliff. Well, him
Like
Iron Man's now.
the big green machine. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I think a lot of folks know that about you, and congrats on that. So, got one more question that you like to ask your guests, but I'm gonna turn this one around. You always ask, does pineapple belong on pizza? That's one of your questions. Here's mine. When it comes to burgers, is it mayo, mustard, or ketchup?
Ketchup only. Get rid of
Love
mayo.
it.
No, no. Do you know McDonald's, like in McDonald's in the Bronx in New York, always ketchup only. And then McDonald's in Connecticut, which is a stone's throw, ketchup and mustard. What the heck? Condiments are not meant to be pushed together. One condiment, and it's always ketchup on a burger. Always
Very,
mustard,
very much like pineapple has no business on pizza.
100%. You still might.
Pete, thank you so much. This has been fun and very informative. Appreciate the opportunity to be the host and you be my guest today. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for being the host. If you are not part of NARPM, please go to NARPM, NARPM.org, or call them at 800-782-3452. Did I get that right? Yep, 3452. And if you are interested in talking to me about remote team members, go to vpmsolutions.com, or you can email me at pete@vpmsolutions.com. Peter, thank you so much for being the guest host.
This was fun.
Everybody, talk soon.